are y'all feeling out there? It is moon night and Venus hour, and Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, will be retrograde on the 11th, 11/11 in Cancer, and that happens exactly at 8:41 a.m. And so we have Mercury, which is the ruler of Virgo, as well as Gemini. But Virgo is also where our south node is. So we say Mercury is the ruler of our south node. And with Jupiter, Jupiter is the ruler of not just Sagittarius, but also Pisces, which is where our north node is. So we say Jupiter is the ruler of our north node. The rulers of these nodes, Jupiter, ruler of the north node, Mercury, ruler of the south node, both of them retrograding basically around the same time, is significant right now, as these are the last retrogrades of 2025 and of the 9 year of the snake year. It's going to be a fire horse next year. I want to say probably end of February or mid-February in the Chinese zodiac. And Jupiter will go direct at the beginning of March. So March 11th is when Jupiter goes direct. Jupiter goes direct at 15 degrees Cancer. And Mercury will go direct on the 29th of November. So 3 weeks of Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio is when it will go direct at 20 degrees. And so this is not our typical retrogrades. Like nothing this year or the last 5 years have been typical. And not only will the nodes shift into new signs next year, but so will Uranus is currently retrograde in Taurus, finishing up the last 4 or 5 degrees of Taurus, and then it'll go back into Gemini for until 2039, so about 15 more years. And Neptune is also finishing up at the last degree of Pisces and will re-enter Aries end of January, I believe, end of January 2026. And Pluto is also already in Aquarius. So these are going to be big generational planets that are moving into new elements and new signs. Paradigms are changing. The old paradigms are dismantling, and these retrograde periods are opportunities for us to rethink the topics of those signs. So in Sagittarius, this is connected to our beliefs, our systems of spiritual connection, judicial systems, justice. Jupiter also is connected to Santa Claus. It's like the Santa Claus of the zodiac, and it bestows blessings and abundance. And you can also consider Jupiter the planet that bestows abundance in financial matters. And this is significant in that Jupiter is in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is connected to our emotional security, our emotional safety and stability, and the paradigms that we have been upholding and living through. We connect our emotional stability and safety to money and finances, and how much of a cushion we have in order to proceed with shopping. This is November holiday season, and this is right before Christmas, when Black Friday is coming up, and we want to show our thanks and gratitude and give gifts to all of our family members. And I feel like this go around with Jupiter and Mercury retrograde at the moment is going to be a different kind of vibe, because like I said, the paradigms that we have been living in are crumbling. Capitalism has been running the show for hundreds of years, and that paradigm is dying away. And my heart goes out to all of us who have been at the mercy of these capitalistic conglomerate conveniences and false senses of security, whether we have been on the consumer side or the employment side. And maybe we still are, and we're trying to figure out, like, we know that there's not an alignment there, like a spiritual alignment. We probably feel like we've been selling our soul for this lifestyle, like we get a paycheck. There is steady income that allows us to buy the things that we want, go on these vacations, maybe like spend money on takeout or DoorDash or whatever it might be on a consistent basis. And like, we can also rationalize these things as treating ourselves, which we definitely deserve to treat ourselves. At the same time, there is a disconnect that is playing in the background, and where Mercury comes in, Mercury being in the sign of Sagittarius right now. Sagittarius which is all about our belief systems and optimism and spending power too. I mean, if you know a Sagittarius, you know, they love to be generous and like buy things for people and themselves, and they like to collect like the cutest little tchotchkes, and you know. But now we are coming into a time where we're having to struggle or deal with or figure out what's really important now. And Mercury in the sign of Sagittarius retrograding currently at 6 degrees. It will meet up with Mars in Sagittarius, and that can be a pretty volatile energy. Mars is defensive, and in the sign of Sagittarius, it can be very bombastic, like exaggerated. I call this inflated ego encounters, because Sagittarius likes to be right, or on the other side of that coin, Sagittarius does not like to be wrong. And I have, you know, a Sagittarius sister, and all my best friends have been Sagittariuses. I love a Sag, but it's one of those things that is undeniable, and no shade at all, but it is just one of those things. There are, of course, exceptions to that rule where there's an openness to other perspectives, which is precisely what we need right now. We need to be open and flexible and adjust to different perspectives and be able to change our mind, because information is changing. Information that is coming in is very conflicting with what we have known in the past. So we have to be able to shift our perspective ourselves and make decisions based on that, based on the conditions that have changed. And Mercury is going to go back into Scorpio. I think it re-enters Scorpio on the 18th of November, and it'll retrograde back to 20 degrees Scorpio. And so what's interesting about 20 degrees is that it's the midpoint between Jupiter and the North Node in Pisces. So it's the midpoint between the long arc between Jupiter and the North Node. So what that signifies to me is that there is information or opportunities happening at that degree, and 20 degrees in degree theory is connected to Scorpio energy, which is all about transformation, and Mercury being the ruler of the South Node in Virgo. We're figuring out what to let go of, release, burn away, transform, alchemize. There are certain routines and belief systems that no longer can come with us. They're obsolete. So these are going to be deeply felt, intense, could be emotions, relationships, beliefs that we may have held on to for generations. And with this co-occurring water trine that's happening with the planets in Scorpio, so that'll be Venus as well. I think Venus has just entered Scorpio, and by the time Mercury moves back to 20 degrees, Venus will also be right around there at 23 degrees. So when Mercury goes direct, Venus will be at 26 degrees, and they eventually will be conjunct at 22 degrees for a moment. But Mercury and Venus in Scorpio will be making a grand water trine with Jupiter in Cancer, which will be retrograde at 24 degrees, and Saturn in Pisces, and Neptune at 29 degrees. Pisces is also in the mix. And then on the I believe it's the 29th, Saturn goes direct in Pisces. But this circuit of water energy, this is intuitive, could be intuitive, emotional, very inward feelings. So these are going to be messages of emotional agreement where you're in alignment with the shifts of routine, the beliefs that we are letting go of. We are in agreement that these need to be transmuted, and the water element itself is going to help us cleanse away that which is not needed. And at the same time, there's going to be these conflicting energies of Mars squaring the nodes. So Mars in Sagittarius around 15 degrees squaring the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. And so this is kind of like a crossroads, choice point moment where, you know, we're trying to let go of the past and also embrace the future, even though we don't know what it looks like necessarily. And it's definitely easier said than done. The real key and like the challenge is to let go of those tendencies of overanalysis and trying to find a guarantee of how things are going to turn out. If, you know, X happens, then Y needs to happen. Like, we don't have those guarantees at the moment. What universe is asking us to do is trust the unknown, which is the North Node in Pisces, believing in the faith that we have in the whole brilliance of the system of the cosmos, and understanding that the more we move in, the more we lean on the mental, the data, the Virgo side of overanalysis, it's like drowning in a lake, like you get anxiety and you're not able to relax, and that's when, you start to drown, you're not able to float. So the more we lean into just breathing it out and relaxing and trusting that you'll be held by the water, you can float and keep your head above water when you learn to relax and breathe it out. So while these things are both happening at the same time, where we're faced with a choice point, and there's no tangible net that we can say that we can bank on, but the universe just wants us to trust more of the brilliance of how everything just always works out. And that has been the case for our lifetimes. And now that we have so much more understanding about how things have been running behind the veil, we can make our own decisions. We pretty much have the power to set the tone for our life from here on out. And we can do away with the toxic, capitalistic, corrupt, sinister censorship, the manipulation, toxicity, just the really, I don't want to call them dark, but the energies that have not allowed us to lean into our creative spirit and be connected to one another. Now that we know that these systems have been operating with that intention of keeping our spirit down and just having this wool pulled over our eyes, now that we have that awareness, we can stop participating in those systems and focus our energies on other things, other more positive, uplifting truths. And we can look to so many methods and modalities that have been around for centuries that have been, like I mentioned before, suppressed or oppressed for fear of losing control. But now we have access. We've always had access, but now we have an understanding of these gifts that maybe we even have them in ourselves, and they've just been laying dormant. And that's another thing with a new DNA that's coming through, I believe. And I can't remember who I was listening to. It could have been Stefan Burns, or Nancy Rebecca is another channeler who also receives information about Three-Eye Atlas. But having this dormant chromosome be released so that our DNA is reconstructed and we have more access to our gifts and abilities and intuition, and we can connect more with one another and create a new earth. So it is an exciting time to be alive. So these retrogrades are not to be feared. They're to be taken advantage of, because we're going back to conversations and situations and matters that we have been through before, and we've probably toyed with the ideas of changing the status, whether it is leaving a relationship or a job, moving, leaving a neighborhood, a country. And the retrograde, Mercury's retrograde back into Scorpio, is really going to have us reevaluate our authentic connection, emotional connection to these people, places, things that we are beginning to grow out of, beginning to outgrow. With a grand water trine, this is going to help us come to terms with the release of these things. We're going to finally accept unconditionally the reality of the end of these relationships, jobs, whatever it might be. And it's also kind of like a grieving of our old identity, because we probably have been in those positions or roles in the relationship for so long that we have kind of become that role. And yeah, it can be kind of intimidating to venture out on your own and explore what else there is out there. I mean, that's part of the progress between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Scorpio energy is really like pulling up the parts that are no longer of use and discarding them, composting them, making room, lightening our load so that we can explore and experience what else is out there. Go on these adventures and broaden our horizons. But before Mercury goes back into Sag, we're going to have to come to terms with these ideas, these obsolete ideas that have to be composted, and in order for us to really move on and keep our eyes forward and not look back with any regret or shame or doubt. Of course, that's easier said than done, but this is a process. And that's why it's super important to have a community that you are connected to, that you're also nurturing and fostering. As part of the Jupiter and Cancer experience is where we are being emotionally provided for, nourished. We have come to a point where we're recognizing what is not helping us grow. And so we're moving out of this stagnation. Uranus going back into Taurus until April 2026 is dismantling those last stubborn pieces of the puzzle, whatever that might look like, the system that you're in that keeps you stable, the financial systems. And it's going to be different for everyone. The financial systems, whether it is the paycheck or it could be some sort of value system, credit cards even. Like, I know for me personally, like, I am moving away from credit cards and learning how to make these transactions outside of credit cards, whether it's bartering or digital currency. Cash is hard to come by, but what is cash anyway? So yeah, we're all learning as we go along and seeing what sticks and what is authentically aligned to us. And at the end of the day, whatever helps us sleep at the end of the day, knowing that we're putting our money towards something that is in alignment to us, and knowing that our money is not going toward all the destruction that has been organized and manufactured for hundreds of years just to keep that system going, keep us in a fearful state. And we're not falling for that anymore. So these are the last retrogrades of the year, of the snake year. And so this is really tying up those loose ends before we start a new beginning in 2026, which will be a fire horse year, which will be a trailblazing year. And of course, it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies and smooth sailing. We're going to have our speed bumps. It's kind of like startup culture where you just see what happens. Like, you're not going to find out unless you fuck around. But that's the thing, we need that courage, which will be the Saturn and Aries moving into, or Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. That courage that we're going to need, where it might be a more slower pace because Saturn likes things more methodical, but at the same time we will need to embrace the courage and that warrior spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, to do things our way and not the way they have been done in the past. So that's going to be a whole new energy to get used to. Both the rulers of the nodes are asking us what we need to let go of, dissolve, how we can relax. How might you reimagine your ancestral legacy? Because Cancer is all about ancestry, ancestral ties, our lineage. And North Node is the ruler of the North Node, and so we are forging a new path for our generation. Like, the pain and the hurt and all of the false prophecies that have come and gone over the past hundreds of years are starting to lose its power because we know better now, and we're rewriting our narrative. So what might you reimagine your ancestral legacy to be? What cycles need to shift? Where do you need to develop more trust? And where do you need to surrender? Yeah, surrendering into unknown. Like, there's a Terence McKenna quote that I recently discovered. Yeah, nature loves courage. You make the commitment and nature will respond to the commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream and the world will not grind you under, it will lift you up. This is how magic is done, by hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a featherbed. So just imagining the most absurdly delicious future and receiving even better when we just let go of expectations, worries, fears, just hurling yourself into the abyss. So that is where we are at in this mid-November time frame. But yeah, Jupiter goes retrograde 11/11 and it will go direct March 11, 3/11. at 15 degrees. So these are particularly impactful for Jupiter ruled Sagittariuses and Pisces, and also Mercury ruled Virgos and Geminis. These two planets are ruling our north and south nodes, our collective north and south node of Pisces and Virgo. So we're all learning to trust the unknown and let go of the overanalysis, the criticism, judgment, self-judgment as well, not just one another, and calling in more grace for yourself, for one another. You know, none of us have everything figured out, so there's no reason to pretend like we do. You know, I'm trying to take things step by step as well, and where I land is where I land, but as long as I'm taking those baby steps and trusting the process, that's the best we can do. So hopefully that all was helpful. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah, it would be an honor to unfold your chart with you so that you have also the awareness to carry forward with you, so that you're able to give yourself and others the grace that you deserve. So yeah, stay centered, stay hydrated, stay grounded, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. All the best.